So hello, welcome everybody. This is Artist Talk on Art. I'm Barry Kostrinsky, the president of the ATOA. This is our 26th Monday virtual open studio. This has been our response to COVID and not getting together in person. The ATOA has been around for 45 years, hosting talks in the lower west side of New York City. And this has been our reaction, and it has been a windfall. And tonight's an example of that, because tonight we have what I like to call snow in LA. Skip Snow has brought together 6 of his artist friends, all Los Angeles based, and they're all going to present. And yes, we're going to try and get at what is the difference between an LA artist and a New York artist. And we're going to obviously delve into each one's artwork. And so in that sense, we're all artists and we're all very much the same, and we'll see that. But there are some differences. There are some choices that were made to move to LA. And we have artists here with varied backgrounds, including some that were in the legal profession and then became artists. So it's going to be an interesting group. We are a 501c3. I like your participation. I'd like you to spread the word to your friends so we can grow our group. Yes, we ask for donations. You can see our website if you like. But this is, I say it over and over again, your most valuable commodity is your time. That is what's in limited supply. And you're all giving your time to the ATOA now. And that means a lot to us. And we sort of come together as community. And it's been a positive experience for these last 26 talks. And it's because people like you, Michael, and because of people like you, Eloisa, and you, Susan, and I don't want to leave anyone out. It's all of you that bring something to the table and sort of make us what we are. I like to say we're all part of a hive, sort of beehive, and there's no hierarchical structure really. We're all just, instead of little combs in a beehive, we're little rectangles. And we all contribute, and feel free to contribute while we have our presenters. But do keep in mind, we can hear your audio. That can trigger people's screens. You may want to mute yourself when other people speak and give presentations. And then just unmute yourself when you want to talk or say something. There is a chat feature that you can put websites or responses into as well. So I'd say let's just jump right in. Let's start with Skip Snow, and I want to thank him for the work that he did. This was all done very quickly and casually, but this is the result of being an artist for many years, when you can call up some friends and say, hey, let's do this, and you get a group of 6 artists from LA together. So yes, it happened quickly, but no, it is the result of a long time involvement in the arts and with these people. I'm sure he didn't just meet last week. I hope so, Skip.
No, not last week. So actually, it's really interesting. We have one Orange County artist here, and Jane is a little bit different from the rest of us in that Jane and I have known each other for, what is it, like 30 years, Jane?
At least.
Long time.
Maybe 35.
Long time. So Jane is sort of, I've had 2 art careers, sort of the art career which started about 8 years ago, and the New York art career which spanned the 80s and some of the 90s. So I don't really have a tremendous amount to say, because I think my friends are going to sort of speak for me a great deal. And I'm really glad to put them all together and have them represent what I think is a really amazing sensibility that reminds me of the days that, Jane, you and I were kids in New York. The sort of exuberance of the LA art scene is really incredible. And with that, I can take questions, I can show my work, but I'd really rather turn it over to my friends and then join in the conversation as it progresses along, Barry, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, but I would like you to show us some images of your work, because after all, we speak in a visual language. You have paintings around you. You're in your studio. Just let us get a look and give us more.
I would love to do that.
Okay, give us more than 3 seconds.
I will warn I will warn everybody that I did not arrange my studio, so every single work that you see is a work in progress. None of the works are finished. I will put my in a bit, and I will show a couple from Instagram. So this is a new one. It's very much true that I have responded to COVID a great deal, and it has really affected not only the way that it's affected not only the way that I make images, but the images themselves. So it's somewhat more horrific than I'm used to. The narratives are sort of a little more grotesque than usual. I think of myself mostly storyteller, although I'm enamored and in love with the multiple dialects of visual mark making that have occurred, you know, over our earth over the last 50,000 years. And I very much make art thinking about that history, that sort of four-dimensional history. And so the work is has in some senses evolved, but I want to show you guys one other thing, which I always like to show people. This is a painting I made in 1977, I believe. It could have been 78. I was about 18 or 19 years old. And as you can see from this painting, in a lot of ways, the way that I paint today is not overwhelmingly different, and the sort of themes that I think about is not overwhelmingly different than the same stuff that I was doing when I was very, very young. One thing that people say about my work, and I don't know if I should take it as a compliment or not, is that a skip snow always looks like a skip snow, and there's nothing that skip snow can ever do to make a painting that doesn't look like a skip snow. In a lot of ways, that's very liberating because I sort of do whatever I want to do. And it sort of makes me a little bit of an outsider as well, because I'm not very reactive to trends and so on and so forth. That's really all I have to say.
Have you ever tried to make a painting that very deliberately doesn't look like yours?
I try so hard, Jane. I fail every time. I want to be, you know, I mean, I'll give you an example. It's really a little bit interesting. So this painting that I'm about to show you guys is me, you know, in a very straight way, trying to rip off Matisse. And I'm sorry if the camera's not quite right, but this is literally me trying to rip off Matisse, which is very odd for me because I don't think of modernism very much in my work. As a matter of fact, I more or less detest modernism as sort of a way of thinking. But I might be the only one in the world who knows that that painting is an homage to Matisse. And that's very true of my work in general, Jane, is that I'm always stealing from everybody all the time, and it still somehow ends up looking like a skip snow. Thanks for the question.
Skip, when you said earlier the four-dimensional history, can you just expand what you meant by that again?
Sure. I think there's a myth of modernism and Western culture that makes people of the 20th century, I don't think so much people of the 21st century, think about art in a very linear fashion, that art is sort of like this sort of ridiculous idea that it started in Mesopotamia and it flowed from Mesopotamia, you know, Assyria to Egypt, and from there to Greece, and blah, 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 to the Middle Ages, blah, 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 to, you know, the Renaissance and so on and so forth. This linear idea of the history of mark making is so stupid and inhibiting and constraining that it really, and offensive, that it's just not a good way to be. And so when I try to construct a picture, I try to do two things. One, take into the consideration of the entire history of mark making across all of cultures, but two, have some sort of awareness of my white male identity, and not appropriate or not do anything inappropriate with the various things that I quote and reference that might be outside of my own particular cultural background.
Skip, do you work from life frequently, as I understand?
Yeah, I do work from two sources, my imagination and nature, and I don't work from photographs, and I never have worked from photographs. It's a huge decision I made in my teens that I wouldn't work from photograph, and I've sort of stuck with it, my entire life. And I think, frankly, that fact, and Patrick, you and I have talked about that a little bit, that fact really does shape the way in which I render things. More just digitally, as Barry was talking about, another one of the artists that was presenting recently, I render things more architecturally than visually from an optical perspective. I usually think of the architecture of an object more than I think about what an object looks like when I try to tell a story about it.
When you say architecture, do you mean?
And now, Barry, I'm getting kind of
Do you mean composition?
Structurally.
Okay.
Well, I mean, a face has an architecture, a hand has an architecture, an incident has an architecture, a Jackson Pollock has an architecture, a Mondrian has an architecture, a two-dimensional surface has an architecture. When I'm trying to tell a story about something, I usually end up relying on my notion of structure more than I rely on what something is supposed to look like.
There's a question from Danny Peralto. How many pieces do you work on at once, and how does digital media figure into your work, if at all?
I guess there's about 45 pictures here, and then there's sketchbooks too. So whatever fits on the wall, like whatever my studio is, I sort of fill it up with unfinished paintings, and that's how many paintings I work on.
Wow.
Tell us about your loft.
So everything is a work in progress.
Can we see those two
And
in
that's-
close up? Those two in close up that you have there. I see that's
Sure.
it. And just give us like 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
So in order to give you 10 seconds on this one, I have to show you something on my computer screen.
That was 2 seconds.
So I know, and I'm not going to give you 10 seconds yet. So this is the origin of those two paintings, and it comes from me questioning identity of gender. So this is a Ganesh. It's an Indian god fortune, but rendered as a female. And I did a lot of those paintings a few years ago, where I tried to sort of disentangle the essence of identity. And that very much led me to, again, sort of architecturally constructing this figure. The long neck is a new innovation, but this figure is a figure that I worked on over years. And actually, I sort of understand completely three-dimensionally what this figure looks like, and put him or her or it into different situations. And I put him or her or it into different narrative sort of settings. And I also don't ever try to constrain him, her, or it to any sort of, gendered sort of way of being. And originally it was exactly about that, of like, how do you strip away from, how do you strip away from a person the markings of identity, which are external, race, gender, sexual orientation, all those kinds of things. And frankly, I have to admit that thus far, what I've discovered is it's not so easy to strip that stuff away from a figure. It's very difficult to strip race or gender away from a human being.
Skip,
And so in some sense, the project continues to be a colossal failure.
Skip, am I right to say you're a big fan of Francis Bacon?
I was Bacon, and he was really nice to me once.
Any
That's Francis Bacon too?
I mean, no, I've met a lot of people. With Francis Bacon, it was a very, brief meeting, but he was very kind to me, and he grabbed my sketchbook out of my hands, looked at it, and said he liked it and stuff. It was very, very, very exciting for me when he did that. I was a maitre d' in a restaurant at the time. So he was just a very, very kind man. He saw me sketching.
We'll take one question and then we'll move on because we do have 6 more presenters. Skip, thank you very much. That I think we got to see a lot of images and interesting work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I have a question, Skip. Why did you leave New York City?
My ex-wife wanted to leave, and somebody was going to pay me to leave,
Good.
and I got to stay and and learned to love it, you know, shortly afterwards.
Uh-huh.
But
Is
I
it
do think-
is
I
it a
do
better
think the
place to
profound
be an
difference-
artist?
It's a completely different place to be an artist. I will say that. I think in New York, because New York is the capital of art, and LA is not the capital of art. It's a provincial place where art is made. There is, at least in my opinion, there is a great liberty from the market that is in LA that doesn't exist in New York, and people tend to be less hierarchical, like in the way they view artists and the art world. I can be pals with somebody who's having a show at the Whitney, and I can be pals with somebody who's, you know, 16 years old and still in high school, and I can have the same regard for, you know, Max's work as you know, Raphael's work, and the three of us can hang out together and be colleagues. And frankly, I find that difficult in New York. I think the sort of pecking order and hierarchy in New York is much more pronounced.
Yeah. And what about space? It's probably easier to find a place to work.
I don't know. I've been looking to move for about 5 years now.
All right.
I mean, the thing is, in a big city, real estate is expensive, you know? Like, there's just
Yeah.
no way around it. I know, you know, look, if I
Yes.
wanted a beautiful loft in Manhattan, it would cost way more than, but people struggle, artists struggle. That's sort of what we do, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you, Skip. Well, you got a comment, really great stuff from Lawrence Wheatman. Lawrence, teacher at, I believe it is NYU, I'm not sure. I do want to move on to Jane Magdalena Bauman. Jane?
Hello.
Welcome. Hello.
This is my first time doing this, and I want to thank Skip Snow for introducing me and setting this up. I appreciate it, Skip. And one of the things that Skip had said at the beginning of this is Skip and I both showed our work at Civilian Warfare Gallery in the 80s in New York City. And, you know, that's where we first met. And that was where I was living when I got out of graduate school at the San Francisco Art Institute. And that was a really great legacy to be taking to New York City and the whole East Village art scene. And one of the reasons I left New York was that the whole art scene in the mid to late 80s started to fall apart. And Civilian Warfare Gallery fell apart. And I was born in Los Angeles, and my whole family is out here. And I decided that it was time to leave New York. And it was, as Skip knows, and as we all know, it was a devastating time in the late 80s. You know, my art dealer, Dean Savard, got AIDS and was dying. Many of my close friends were dying, got sick and died. And Skip and I saw that whole thing happen. We saw that whole thing like build up and then dematerialize.
Jane, let me ask you, Jane, how do you feel your work changed being in Los Angeles as opposed to when you were in New York City?
Well, it was, I felt at first like a total fish out of water. I felt that my work was very different than the work I was seeing around me. And I went into almost a hermit-like situation where I was trying to have my art reflect my new environment. and I started to work on a series of landscapes and art that was dealing with the environment and art that was dealing with drought. And my work was always, you know, quite politically motivated. When I was in New York City, one of the projects that I was doing was I was making painted records. And I have a few of these painted records I can show you. And
That's a great theme, painting on records. Very
oh yeah, yeah, a little bit hard to get in here. But I made about 300 of these painted records when I was living in New York City. I have about 40 left. And I abruptly quit painting on these when I moved back to California because I felt that I needed to do something completely different to take into account that I was in a totally different environment. And so it's a little hard the way my studio is to get everything, you know, set up. But I started to do paintings that look like this. They're on aluminum, and they're paintings of close-ups of flowers with raindrops and lightning bolts, and to have like a watery thing happening here, and then to have like an iridescent metal panel that was very opalescence, and in the right light it looks like it's reflecting different colors, almost as if it's on fire. And those were a couple of the dichotomies that I found that were so different than in New York City. Like, we have too much water back there. Here we don't have enough. You guys are drowning, we're burning up. And so I kind of took that theme when I first moved back here to California. And like what I'm doing right now, though, is working on paper. And I feel, because of COVID and because of just the way life is, I feel right now like I really want to work with ephemeral materials. So I've been working with fairly thin paper and doing lots of spray paint, using objects as stencils, and making these composite almost like collages that have a very surface wispy quality to them. And another thing I have up right now for you guys that are in New York City is there's a show of my stencils from the 1980s up at Clamp Art Gallery on West 29th. And that's going to be up through the 25th. And it's been kind of interesting because with the art that I've been doing now, I've been having a conversation with my past. I've been taking old scraps of paper that I saved from like 30 years ago. And I'm the kind of person who saves everything. You know, I save pieces of like masking tape that I think are interesting. I have big piles of it and stuff. It's kind of weird, but you know.
Oh, it is a common thing. It's a common thing for artists to save everything and try to use it.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of like my studio's full of little like piles of like masking tape that I find interesting to look at. You know, and I think anyone that has used that blue tape to stencil with, and I know there's bound to be some of you out there, you know, you fall in love with it. When you fall in love with the color of it, the texture, masking tape. And so, you know, I saved all of these old papers and old overspray papers. And I've been taking remnants, little seeds of some of the art of my past and reworking it and recomposing it and recombining it. And I think part of it has to do with just sort of feeling, since we've been in this COVID lockdown, of really feeling lonely for my art friends and lonely for the kind of companionship. Like, I was always having people over to my studio. I was always going to art openings, always, hanging out. And now it's, it's me and, a few Zooms. And so I've been having this conversation with myself, with my past. And that's been pretty interesting, and it's been more fruitful than I actually thought it was going to be. But I have about 300 or 400 sheets of paper of stuff I saved from my past, and I'm just going to continue to rework it into what I'm doing now. And then when that runs out, well, we'll see.
Jane, let me ask you, what was some of your earliest experiences with art, maybe when you were a kid? And I also want to ask, do you have a graphics background?
I'll answer the first one first. I was one of those little kids that didn't want to go outside and play. I wanted to stay inside and play with my Crayolas. I was always intensely visual. And I was a doodler. I liked to, make constructions out of paper. And my art training when I was a little kid was non-existent. I went to a Catholic parochial school, and once a month on Fridays, they gave us all a blank paper plate and some crayons, and that was art. It's like a pitiful, pitiful, pitiful. So it was pretty much me on my own, just working away with the Crayolas. But as soon as I got in high school, I went to a pretty good high school, an all-girls high school. And I had a couple of teachers who knew something about art. And I actually got some decent training. And I went to Art Center College of Design on Saturdays in high school and took life drawing classes. It was in Hancock Park before it moved to Pasadena. Yeah. And that was a great experience because I learned how to draw. And that was it was sort of funny. I went to Santa Clara University as an undergraduate, and then I went to the San Francisco Art Institute for graduate school. And as soon as I got at the Art Institute, it was the thing where representational art was on everybody's shit list. Well, that's what it was like, in the late 70s. And they had things in the ceramics department, they got rid of all of the potter's wheels because they didn't want anybody making, a vessel. And the whole thing, Richard Shaw was a chair of the department, and the whole thing was making this sort of sometimes abstract, but this huge difference between useful and pure art. And so I think my work's definitely been informed with a graphic legibility, but I never had any formal training in graphic design. I think part of the reason I'm attracted to that look was it was how I was rebelling against the Art Institute in the late 70s. Even though I loved it, and it was probably the best thing that happened to me. But there were some rigidities in the curriculum, the way the school was run, that was really a lot of fun to rebel against. Drawing something naturalistically and watching the horror of your teachers you know? Or I had a friend who was a sculptor, and he purposely made like a perfect pinch pot bowl just to like freak, you know, Richard Shaw out. Well, it's a useful, it's a useful thing. Oh dear, that violates our principles. But you know, so as a child, I was like trained by myself, and you know, and then going to a really great art school. The thing that you learned at the Art Institute, you learned a lot about art, tremendous amount about art history and all of that. But the best thing is they taught you how to live as an artist. You know, that, you know, how to, like, you know, it's okay to have top ramen for dinner every night. Popcorn is an acceptable meal. Without having, you know, like that, it's okay to live in a really crummy dump, you know, as long as you're making your art, you know, and teaching us ways like how to scavenge art supplies. You know, you go to the back of, like, you know, the hardware store and look in their dumpster. You know, just like all these ways of finding materials and getting free stuff, and you know, how to make a go of it.
When Robert Mapplethorpe and Patti Smith would go to Coney Island, he would eat the hot dog and she would eat the sauerkraut. So that's the story. Her book is a great book, by the way, a great read. Fascinating, Jane. You know, the work that's right behind your head is like some of the work I do. I was going to ask about spray painting. I do a thing where I throw leaves down and spray it, and then I see what I get. And it's sort of, it's a lot of fun. You almost get like a photographic negative going on, and many different layers within the blacks and grays. It's a nice way to work. Nice to see your work. I'll open it up to some questions and then we'll move on. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Not all at once.
Could you maybe do some close-ups of what's behind you, the colorful?
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay. Things like, I have an Instagram feed. If you just look at my name, Jane Magdalena Bauman, and I post a lot on Instagram, and I have a website too. If you just Google my name, my website will come up. But
they're awesome.
oh, thank you. I've been really enjoying you know, making these. Really enjoying doing this stuff.
Where is your studio?
For from circular disc to square frame.
Yes. Yeah. I found it interesting to compose in the circular format, you know, the Tondo format, and making a transition to working in a square. There's a lot of similarities between a square and a circle. You know, they're both got this symmetry to them. And the same issues that you come up with compositionally of working in a circle are similar because of the symmetry to the compositional issues of working with a square. You know, like how to break that space up. You know, how to make how to place things, you know, in the composition so it's not boring. You know, too much symmetry can be pleasing, too much is boring, you know, all those types of issues that you get into with different formats.
We had an interesting presentation. Go ahead, Effie.
Would you choose one of your pieces and talk about it? You know, I've never seen work like yours in particular, but I'd like to get your take on it.
Sure, let's pick one. Okay, here, let me You know, it's been the greatest thing that I discovered a few years ago are magnets to hang paperworks on. You just put either a push pin or a nail in the wall, you know, and then you can, let's see if we can get this one.
Yeah, actually, we were talking to an artist last week who showed us this way of hanging work.
Oh, it's great because you don't have to put a hole in the paper.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can get the super strong magnets on Amazon. And
Great.
you know,
That's great to know.
yeah, I don't
What
know.
are they called? Super strong magnets?
Yeah, rare earth
So
magnets.
did you make
Actually, seeing your work more close up, it's much more beautiful. Instead of like seeing it like with a lot of other pieces.
Yeah,
Like looking at this piece, kind of isolated from the others, makes it much more interesting to me.
I agree. I wish I had a studio where I could spread everything out. It's but this piece is called A Blown Away, and it's got some real old pieces in it, like this piece right here that's in the upper left-hand corner. That's about 30 years old, this piece of paper, and it was an overspray piece, and it had really beautiful iridescent colors in it, so I just saved it, put it in a pile. The piece next to it with the hot pink and the black.
And that looks like a profile or a face. Was that an accidental? Was that an accidental discovery, making that into a face?
No, it just sort of suggested itself.
Interesting.
Okay.
I usually go with, oh, that looks like this. You know, and how I made the piece with the pink and the black is I had some flowers in my studio, and they were starting to fade, and there were these spider mums that have these little spiky petals. And so I just threw it down on top of the pink, got my black spray paint out, and that's what.
Now I see it, yeah. And it's a beautiful profile.
Yeah, it's a combination of something new with something very old. And, you know, I'm just sort of responding to the whole political situation and, you know, just sort of like, oh my God, he's got COVID. It's just, as we all know, it's been real weird lately out there. And
yeah. Jane, just curious, when you show these pieces, if you've ever shown them or plan to, are you going to do it with unframed with the magnets?
well, that's how I prefer things.
Yeah, I like it that way too.
My art dealers don't always prefer that. You know, they like, well, you know, they like things to look marketable and saleable. But I really prefer these just hanging, blowing in the breeze.
Yeah.
So that would be my preferred way to show these. And I am planning on showing these. Until recently, I was a tenured professor at Coastline College here in Orange County, and I just retired just very recently. And
congratulations.
I hated teaching on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Teaching studio classes on Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, it just drove me nuts.
As a tenured teacher, aren't you supposed to teach until you die?
Well, it just about killed me. Just about killed me, Mary.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. Very nice work. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. This is fun.
Very nice. We're going to move to Liz Walsh. Again, this is ATOA, and this is a presentation organized by Skip Snow. We have 6 or 7 artists, including a gallerist from Los Angeles, and we're getting hopefully a sense of maybe what's the difference between LA and New York, but at the same time, we're all artists, so we all sort of speak the same language. We hear the same story. You had to go internal because you can't go to openings. Everybody here misses the sort of interaction that artists do, the dialogue we get out, the new faces we see when we go to events. I do want to make the point, Skip mentioned something earlier about the linear history of art. Yale University canceled its big intro class, which was one of the most popular classes at Yale, for just the reason that Skip said. And instead, they went with thematic presentations like color, social issues, and they tried something like that. The end result was they felt that didn't work either, and you need sort of a mix of the old school linear presentation and then a class that focuses on the human face throughout time or the use of color. And so there's often, there's certainly so much art was left out of the Western culture's presentation in its teachings. It's a shame, but that is being changed as we speak. And it's, you know, like any big boat, it's slow to make turns. So without further ado, Liz Walsh.
Hi there, thank you so much. This is rad, and I loved last presentation, and Skip too. I loved seeing your studio. So thanks for inviting me, and here we go. So for me, when COVID hit, I actually had a show up, and it was at this gallery that Skip knows well, Rashid, Alex, like at Last Projects. And it was like such a really big community place for all of us. And, you know, I couldn't have an opening or whatever. So I started organizing live video feeds, and it's called Supermoon. And we've done 6. And it basically, the first one was on the opening night, and we just invited some friends to do some things and did it live from our house. But it's grown into this great thing, and it's kind of evolved more into like a music thing, like for bands, because there's no venues anymore. So bands, you know, are super excited to have this kind of collection of band together, and then, you know, everyone can watch at the same time. So I'm not going to be showing any of that today, but that was my reaction to COVID as far as art goes. And I am in love with community more than ever, just because it verifies so many things that are important. And, you know, whatever the divide has happened with our country, it's, you know, you can feel the power that community can have. And it's the first time I've experienced it in my life. And I am just, you know, I hope we can do something with that, continue to. So anyway, let's get on to art. Let me see if I can, let me switch this around. So my work is kind of goes in between being like detailed, you know, really rendered. Like I love detail, lighting, not hyper realism, because this doesn't look real, but, you know, like hyper shading, I guess. But then it can also go to like something like this, which is, I guess in some way, like I do a lot of work on the computer, and this kind of work where the paint's being poured or things are happening, it, for some reason, it reminds me of a computer. The idea that, you know, you make a gesture with your hand, but yet you're not actually touching it. So there's like a removal of, I don't know, I don't know what I call it, accomplishment, but there's some kind of removal of human touch. So for me, these paintings sometimes are like that, just because I'm pouring a lot of paint and seeing what happens. I also started working a lot on foam, different foam pieces. There's the dog. I have to say COVID has also been all about distraction for me, because we have a little child, and, you know, there's been all kinds of, you just learn to deal with it. But she's the best girl ever. Here she is. Anyway, so I think that my work is definitely focused on the natural world. Like I'm in love with the idea of like water hitting a land, like water next to a mountain, or like a plant popping out of the ground. Like that to me is just so exciting to like recreate that. but I think I also, you know, some of this stuff with I've done a lot of these cockpit paintings, and that's kind of almost the antithesis of nature in a way, but maybe it's about human accomplishment and sort of human, I don't know, the fact that we've gotten this kind of, you know, this being intricate is kind of interesting to me, as far as what humans can do.
Are you familiar with Catherine Bernhardt's work?
No.
A friend of mine.
It's an artist that comes to mind when I see the nature work. No question about it. I think you'd like the work.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely take that into account. I have tons of others. These are all kind of ones that I guess I'm trying to create a family right now that, you know, maybe eventually I would show or something. And I'm trying to work in a consistent size, because in the past, like Skip can tell you, like I'm like all over the place with my scale, with my materials. So, I mean, here's another foam work over here that it's actually supposed to go this way. But, you know, I love the chance that can happen with paint. You know, I guess I love paint. And this is, you know, I'm not sure what this is, but it's just fun to make.
Wendy Liss is going to like that, no question about it.
But it sort of has a mouth, and this is, I mean, I just love creating little spots, you know, like either in a painting or, you know, when I work with the clay and stuff, I'm just like, you know, like something could sit here. And maybe that's part of having a daughter too, or a kid that like plays, and you're like, you could put your little doll in here, or your antelope, or, you know, whatever. But anyway,
you know, what comes through to me is your sort of fascination with creation. You're sort of excited by, you know, watching what happens when the paint moves, you know, and sort of layering. You seem, in a very good way, you seem excited by what you do.
Yeah, definitely excited. And I mean, I think earlier on as an artist, I was, you know, I used art to like just get through the day, you know, like it was very, you know, I started painting it when I was like 18, and it was like opened up a whole new world for me. Like I could put my feelings, or I could put angst, whatever I had going on, it could go into the work. And then I could look at it, and that to me was super exciting. And I still think I have that happening here too. You know, my work, the stuff I'm showing today isn't maybe as creepy as the other stuff I have, but I do tend to have this weird creepiness, or sort of like unsettling, like a comedy and sort of like a little bit of darkness, which, you know, I haven't totally figured it out, but I love it. You know, it's fun. It feels like what the world is, I guess, you know. Does anyone have any questions? I could show you that. I mean, I like stuff like this too. Hold on. Switch this around. You know, like just working with these guys. What are these guys called again?
Pipe
cleaners?
Yeah, pipe cleaners. Hello. It's been a long day. Pipe cleaners. You know, just like this to me, you know, it doesn't, it's pretty informal, but, you know, and then it gets thrown on the ground, and then it even gets better because someone stepped on it and it has a, you know, a shape I would have never made. But
Liz, do you want to talk a little bit about your other life as one of the artists in LA Creeps?
Oh, sure. Well, another way that I've worked is I had a friend, my friend Kim Weller, her and I would go around LA and just sort of erect statues around town, and then kind of interact with them, photograph them, and then take them away. Sometimes, you know, it was stuff that would look really great in a gallery, but then on the street, it took on a whole different feeling, you know? I don't know if someone's asking something, but that's kind of where some of the foam work started for me too, was like kind of, you know, like this, I actually photographed this leaning against a fence recently. And, you know, when this thing is outside and leaning on a fence, it has a totally different feeling than in my studio. But yeah, and I think, you know, we haven't been doing it quite as much, but it was a really great way to feel good about art, you know, because it didn't have anything to do with like a gallery, or it just had to, you know, wherever you want, when you want. And that was really wonderful.
One of the
Okay, I just wanted, I've noticed that West Coast artists, now it could be my imagination, seem to be more playful and take bigger chances, and they don't seem maybe a little less stressed. They don't seem as like maybe more going out or being, you know, out in the sun, and the outdoors is definitely much more part of their source material. And they always seem, not all, I shouldn't say this, but they seem to really kick the paint into high chrome colors that are really bright. Yeah. And yeah, they seem less serious, and they're not so much taking it out of whatever happened in college.
I would agree. And I actually had someone ask me that. I got interviewed for something a while ago, and someone asked like about making art in LA, or and they actually specifically about Mike Kelly. And
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I agree. And I was in New York for a little while, and making art there did feel different, but it was also wonderful in the sense that it was so condensed and so awesome that like you almost like, I don't know, you were definitely a part of the whatever the art situation was, you were a part of it as far as looking at things. The zeitgeist was happening more so maybe, but yeah, but I do feel like in the West Coast, you possibly don't have quite as much of a hierarchy to work on, to work inside of.
Where did you go to school, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I went to CCAC in San Francisco, but I did a residency at Cooper Union for a little while. And then I actually taught in Brooklyn, taught little kids in Brooklyn for a bit. But yeah, and I love New York, but I also, you know, I'm from California, and I feel like this is much more my comfort zone, you know. I always got a little mad at New York because I felt like I was, you know, I had to go by the rules of the city. Like I had to take the subway, and I had to do some things which for some reason frustrated me. but there's an amazing beauty to all of that too, that, you know, you don't get in LA. You don't have the people, the crowds of people.
My phone. I'm sorry to interrupt. Oh, sorry.
Anyway, I don't want to take up too much time because I know there's others, but you know, if anyone has questions, let me know.
Thank you. Very nice. Very nice painting. Very freehand.
Yes.
Very nice. And your color sense, if we had to match what we see on this screen with the painting, your glasses and your shirt match your art. You're not, you're fully integrated as an artist, obviously, and it's not the pretend, so to speak. Nice to see.
I can't help it. I try really hard to like, let's have like a really mellow, beautiful palette, you know? And I guess I just have little sort of strategies, and this is what ends up happening, you know? These are my strategies. Anyway, but thank you so much for having me.
Hey, could I ask a quick question for Liz?
Of course, Robert. Thank you.
I was wondering, the foam piece that you leaned, the curved foam piece that you leaned outside and took a photo of, did you think of the photo more as the actual piece, or did you think of that more as a documentation of a installation, or what would you call it?
That is like such a great question, because I guess in a way I did it. I live kind of in a rural part of LA, like it's almost in the mountains, and like I have, like if you go out my back door, it's kind of just like hills and stuff, and I leaned it against a chain link fence in my backyard, and it was like in the serious part of COVID, so no one was gonna be coming over, no one was gonna see it. But I posted it on Instagram, and like so in a way the picture was the art, you know. And if someone had come over or looked at it, they might have maybe related more of the figure to it, because I do feel like, okay, hold on, I feel like these things feel like figures, you know. They kind of have like a weird slump and a gravity to them. So, but in the end, it was about the photo, you know, and documentation and as being art possibly, you know, and then the spread of it through the internet, you know, the people being able to see it and feel it. So, but thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You know, one of the artists here, Michael Krasowitz, has taken his art off the wall. He does paint on clothing, and he does other things, and he mentions activating the art into a space. So I think, yes, you can capture it with a photograph, but you notice when you brought that foam out, it became alive with the environment. So no matter how much you sort of document it, that's almost an abstracted layer. And the work has a presence in the space that I think you can't deny. And that, yes, it's ephemeral, because once you bring it back in the studio, it's gone. So it plays on both levels, but if you want to catalog it and then have something left, you have the photograph. But I think its presence in the space when you bring work outside is very powerful, and is, you know, it speaks a lot, I think.
Well, thank you. I love that too. I agree.
Thank you. We're gonna move on. I think claps again. That was very nice, Liz. Thank you. I want to move to Patrick Donovan. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you.
I did allude that there was one artist here who worked in the legal profession beforehand, and that's Patrick. Patrick, tell us a little bit about your history, and of course, share images, and, you know, feel to discuss whatever you like.
Yes, that's right. I did have a previous career as a lawyer. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I went to law school there, and then I was a worker in the federal beehive for about 21 years, and then I was in private practice for 10 years. And during the course of while I was working in a private practice, I started doing artwork, taking some courses at the Corcoran College in Washington. And so it became time for me to leave the legal profession, I decided. And so I went to art school. I went to art school for 1 year in Baltimore. This was in 2008. And then I went to the San Francisco Art Institute for graduate school for 2 years. And then I came to Los Angeles. That was like 6 years ago. So, and since then I've been making art, a painter. I've been in several group shows, one solo show here, one in San Francisco. Not in major galleries, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it was fun to do. And so I'm not in my studio, but what I did gonna try to do this share screen thing and see if it happens here. Whoops, screen. So let me see if this works. Did that work?
Yep, very good.
Great.
I'm
So
not seeing anything just yet.
So all these slides, there's about 10 slides. It won't take too long. I'm showing basically what I'm working on now. And what I'm working on now is paintings that mostly are about the sort of urban environment that I find myself in right now. So this is obviously something we might be seeing now. I had a model, I took a photograph. I was going to paint his face, but I decided it was more sort of current to not have the face, because we walk around downtown, we see lots of people, but we don't know who they are. They all have masks on. They're sort of anonymous. Plus, part of being in a big urban environment is you see a lot of people. Everything is sort of anonymous. So that's what this one is kind of about. I'm not sure I like the way these, the way these straps end. I may extend them around so they show where they would be at the back of his head, but I haven't done that yet. So this one, once again, obviously something we see around downtown all the time. One of the homeless people, but they're sort of, it's sort of interesting how they give themselves sort of almost like a regal appearance. You know, they have this frilly stuff up here. They sort of decorate themselves, and of course, it's very sad to see someone like this, but it's just part of the urban environment we live in. So it's sort of part of this series that I've been working on. And this is a little bit more cheerful one. It's sort of the built urban environment. It's like it's an art gallery or a museum or something. There's a cleaning person there, and then there's the people looking at the art. So it's about workers. It's about economic differences. But once again, it's just something we might see. You might walk into an art gallery and you might very well see this. Although after I painted it, it also occurred to me that maybe this figure with the trash can is another work of art. Maybe it's who's that guy? Dwayne Hansen painting. Yeah.
Sculpture.
At the time, I wasn't thinking of that, but it might be. And
Patrick, what size are these? Are they all different sizes?
The first one was about 16 by 20. This one was 50 by 40. This one is 52 by 62.
Helps to know the size to be able to visualize it.
Yeah, this one is also 60 by 50. And once again, it's in some sort of a built urban environment. I like this one because it's so simplified, where he's a spectator. It's taken from a photograph of a spectator at the Whitney when I was taking photographs there. And it looks like he's looking perhaps into a darkened room with a video screen. Once again, I like it because it's very simple. But this is also a scene in a museum. Happens to be my brother and sister-in-law, but it's the same kind of thing. It's people in some sort of a built, constructed environment, and they're doing things that we frequently see today, taking pictures. Whoops. Oh, sorry, I keep going backwards. One of these is two policemen downtown. I tried to make it, I did make it very dark, just so it would be different than other ones. But these were two, I take an evening walk every evening, air quality permitting, downtown, and paint and take a photograph and then base the painting on that. The background is invented. I mean, it's totally blank, once again, very simplified. Whoops. Then this one is actually not a painting. It's some tire treads mounted on a board. But it didn't seem to me, of course, tires do exist in rural areas, of course, but nonetheless, I thought this was sort of maybe typical of an urban situation. Then, and I do like banality as a theme, banality, ubiquity. So these are two UPS boxes. It's sort of like, maybe it's also a little bit of a narrative. Like the first one is the box was delivered and then it's nighttime, but the box is still there. It hasn't been picked up. It's sitting on someone's front porch. This one is about, each of these is 2 panels. Each one is 14 by 11. Then this is a sink. This one I think is 9 by 12, a yellow sink. I like the mood. I like paintings by, if you're familiar with Tim Eitel, Michael Boremans, also Rudolf Stingel, and very, very cynical paintings. I kind of like the mood of those. And this is sort of like, it's kind of dirty, a yellow sink. You're not quite sure what's going on, but it's.
You have very strong painting skills. That's obvious.
Yeah.
You know, you really are a talented, and I don't want to use this word in the wrong way. You're a talented realist, but you also said it in a strong conceptual as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I try to make them about something. When I was in art school, they said in order to function as contemporary art, it needs to be about something. I'm not sure I agree with that, but it sort of makes sense a little bit.
Are these oil?
Oil or acrylic?
These are all oil, yes. Then this one I call the future of sex.
I think you're right.
Maybe it's already here, I'm not sure, but so it's sort of contemporary life, or maybe a disturbing aspect, maybe a little bit of contemporary environment we live in. This is actually based on a photograph of my legs, but I added these things, these things in his legs, like maybe there's something bionic going on or electronic going on with his legs. So this one is 24 by 18. Then I also like the idea of images. You know, part of the world we live in is just surrounded by images. Like right now, everyone's looking at images, right? So I liked this painting is sort of, it's obvious that it's a painting of an image. It's not really a painting of that person. It's a painting of an image of that person, which ties into a lot of the artists I mentioned previously, like Tim Eitel and Rudolf Stingel. They do knockoffs of images, you might say. So this one is based on, this is the Mcguire Gardens. It's a park in downtown Los Angeles near the library, and it's artificial grass. So it's a shadow of a tree cast on the artificial grass of the little park there. That's what that one is. Whoops. And I guess that's it.
Very nice. Let's open it up to questions and thoughts, or, you know, even statements. Anybody, you know, as you like. You can stop screen sharing so we can, excellent. Nice.
I'm really struck by the perspective and use of the way you angle people and objects. It's very striking. And also the imagery is great.
Yeah, especially that shot of the legs, you know, that he showed. It, you know, that it, you know, it gives you that look where you shouldn't be looking. You're really not seeing the whole. You're asking for more. I think that's a good point, Joe.
What's the time span on the paintings that you just showed us? Are they like the last 5 years, the last 2 years? How long does it take you to finish a painting?
I would say the last 18 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
impressive.
I find that the hardest part I've had in the paintings is doing the background. If it's a figure, the figure I can sort of do, but working it into a background is the most difficult part, which is part of the reason I like simplifying them, which is also something Tim Eitel does, the artist does. And it makes it, I don't know, so that's part of the reason I do that. But yes, I like the backgrounds are the most difficult part. And I like the ones where the guy with the guy with the trash can. I must have painted the background on that like 4 or 5 times, different things, completely different things, before I get what I feel will work. So.
Can you talk a little bit about your just artistic life? I mean, you were a lawyer, maybe before you pursued law school or during law school. Like, or is that sort of a later life interest in art?
Yeah, I really didn't do a lot of art in, took one art school class. I had a friend, we were very interested in art. And we made a couple paintings each and we exhibited them in some public works on the mall, actually in the Ellipse by the White House. But then after that, I really didn't do any art. I was interested, I went to all the museums, museum shows, things like that, I read about it. But I didn't do any art until I became interested again when I was thinking of leaving the legal profession. When I started to take up, so there's really a blank there. I really have no artwork to show for that 30-year period.
Well, you played catch up really quickly. That's obvious. Very nice work, Robert. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Clap them up. Storms of claps and snaps. Very nice. Let's move to Alex Sanchez. We still have two more presenters. We have Robert Stark, the gallerist, and we have, I'm going to get your name right, we have Rashid Muhammadi to come. We'll probably go a little over today, but this is certainly a wealth of information, a wealth of new faces, and you're all doing a great job, so thank you in advance. Alex, go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself. I see an exciting studio behind you. And feel free to screen share or present as you like.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm here in historic South Central Los Angeles, really close to USC in the LA Coliseum. And we're in my studio, which is the same as my apartment. And I think I have a few things I can screen share, that's for sure. I got, older and newer works in the studio. It's kind of like my working wall back there, the corner. I've had a lot of free time this year, which has been a fun thing, being in the studio a lot more than would normally be. Like Liz, I got a little kid who's today's my day off. So he's 8, and so he's been out of school since late February.
Forever.
Yeah. So that's been a whole exciting experience. But luckily, I am an artist, so it's one of the best things you can do with kids. So yeah, he helps me a lot in the studio. So that's been a big thing. And now I'm working again, but I still got a lot of studio time. And so I guess that leads into, I wanted to show some an image from my website, because in LA we didn't go anywhere for like 2 months. We had the lockdown orders or stay-at-home orders. So I worked on my website during that time, which has been there's plenty of time to work on art and organizing all the things you didn't do. So a lot of that went down this year. But let me see if I could get this on here. Let's see. So that's just let's see. Oh, did I do it right?
What are we looking at?
Is it showing up on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully we're scrolling.
Yeah, no, we are. We're seeing sort of,
okay.
Yeah, we're seeing it. Your background, your screen background with the win big is probably confusing people, but we figure it out.
Okay.
We see it.
Okay. Well, basically, there's a menu screen, all the different tabs, and the tab I worked on this year was Untitled Folder, Works 2012 to 2019, 7 years of my life. And so there's all the images. There's not much info of titles or sizes, but it's a thing to scroll on there. So let's see.
Abstract expressionism.
So that's just one for reference. And then I have another one that this is Instagram. If anyone wants to see that, where I post a lot of artwork and a lot of home life and different things. But this is one of the newer paintings. It's a portrait of my son that he helped actually start by drawing like a still life fruit bowl that's on the left-hand side of the painting. And then kind of came up with the images where he wanted me to draw him and he wanted me to draw a skull. And then I kind of go in and finish the painting afterwards, which is fairly a new thing. And doing figurative work is kind of fairly new, kind of adding that into what I do. Not that I didn't do it before, but
it's very successful. That piece that you showed where you worked with your son obviously brings to mind Basquiat, the way he breaks up his composition sometimes. And of course, this is something totally different. Nice to see such a wide range.
Yeah, this is kind of what I've been focusing on like the past few years. And this is pretty small. It's like, I want to say 12 by 12 inches. It's on panel. It's a lot of different layers. It's mostly oil paint. The palettes kind of take on whatever they feel like they have to. So I really wanted to make a dark painting. It takes a lot of time to build it up, and I'm always trying to keep something of where I start at. So I'll work on these on and off about 3 or 4 months.
Alex, are you a California native?
Yeah, born and raised. Lived here my whole life. I grew up in San Bernardino, which is just like the next county over from Los Angeles. A lot of desert, really wide open. I'm gonna try and share some other images on there. Let's see.
Alex, I love the one behind you too.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I could like move my computer around and show people. I'm trying to select another images real quick, but maybe not. There we go. That's this is like a completely different type of painting I was doing, still fairly small scale. And what it is, it's a book cover. So it's a book cover for a collection of poems by Charles Bukowski. I didn't put that information on the painting. I've been painting book covers that are in kind of like opposition to the other types of paintings I've been making. It takes me kind of like a longer time to figure out something that like kind of speaks to me that I want to paint. But I really like painting text. That's kind of a lot of the joy in it for me. And then we're talking about painting or images, painting from image, using from image earlier. I like the translation of when I decide to take something from a physical object, whether it be a photograph or a real life thing, and then translate that into whatever I'm gonna make it. And that helps kind of inform both the decisions I make aesthetically and kind of the layout of the painting and how it ends up, and how I decide where to go with it. And that's, yeah, this is like maybe 14 inches tall. I forget the width. It's a little narrower than the last one. It's on linen. It's mostly oil. The little fluorescent hue in the corner that's acrylic on there.
I don't know if I'm reading this right, but I see comedy in the fact that it says war all the time and poems for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely humor in it. And in trying to find, I think a lot of times in the language that I'm choosing, you know, trying to laugh at certain situations that are difficult or the context of the words. I was also born in 1984, so like that sometimes easy choices like that come into factor into what I paint. But yeah, I really like that piece a lot. And I think I loaded up a couple more to show real quick. This is a bigger piece that's a lot more figurative, another portrait of my son. This one's done mostly with pastels, and I took it from a picture that had a strange story where he kept picking up knives, and I wanted to show him at least how to hold the knife so he didn't cut himself if he did grab another one. And then I was showing him how to hold the knife by the handle, and he's holding it, and he said a funny but creepy thing where he said, "And then I saw the bad guy's blood." And we happened to be taking a picture of him at the same time. And then I made a large scale drawing of it. He swears it's not him for whatever reason, which I find really funny. I don't know. There's another painting that's like a happy face, and he says it's him. So I don't know what that means.
I certainly like the connectedness between you and your son in your work, in what he says, even working together. That's a very warm feeling. Very nice to see.
Thank you. I mean, it definitely is for me. So, I got another one that I started making these black paintings like several years ago, and this is still like fairly small scale, and they're made with black gesso. And I think about painting a lot. I think about the choices in the beginning of it, like what material it's on. I've found what I really like to paint on over the years. I also work in a shop where we produce canvases, so I get a lot of time to kind of like choose and learn about materials or what I like to paint on. And I really fell in love with black gesso. It's really flat. It's like one of the flattest blacks that I've seen, and I think it's beautiful. And so I started calling these American paintings because they maybe just historically thinking about what color America would be if it was like what, I don't know, maybe like if someone asked me and I would say it was like flat black, whatever that meant. And then I started adding, like this one has sunflower seeds in it, which as a little kid I played baseball, and you're always chewing sunflower seeds, and I literally like spit them onto the canvas so they kind of lay where I put them. There's butts of cigarettes from marijuana cigarettes on there.
What's
I throw
that?
that in. Huh?
What's that? Oh, this is California.
Yeah, which is funny because I had a gallery ask me in Mexico when I was shipping one of these over there if it was okay, because that's even worse over there. So.
Well, I like how you're reaching outside for materials. You also bring a playful element, but you're creating very serious work here at the same time with your playful elements. It's not lighthearted work at all. And, this sort of act of spitting the sunflowers out of it. I mean, artists today, we want to reach for other ways to approach our canvas, and you've certainly done that.
Thank you. I got one more I can show you, and then you know, if anyone has any questions about what's behind you, this is just what I'm working on. It's old pieces, new pieces, everything in between. And I just try to show things that I've made in the past few years. I wish I had a higher resolution photo of this one, but it's actually on my wall, and it's all oil on linen. These usually take me about like 3 or 4 months to produce. A lot of going in or just kind of waiting to paint new layers.
How do you get your texture?
Just by painting it. Now I use a lot of brushes. Before I didn't. Before I'd use a lot of like random sticks to make a different mark. But now I really like brushes, and so I kind of have learned to appreciate them and use them. So I go through a mixture of different size brushes. I use the cards that you use to ride public transportation here that are called tap cards as like a kind of palette knife. And then I use a screwdriver for like a third mark. And I paint really fast too, usually when I do this. So it's like I paint like one layer in like 20, 30 minutes, and then I let it sit for like a month, and then I'll go back to it.
Very nice. Thank you. Let's open up to questions, compliments, anything anybody likes. And then I'm sorry, everyone, we're going a little late, but we're tackling 7 presenters tonight. And thank you all for sort of hanging in there. Any thoughts, anyone? It was beautiful work. That last piece, I like the blue in there. It's sort of, you have a serious tone, but that blue, it's really quite beautiful.
Thank you.
I found your lettering very effective. A lot of people use lettering, but you use it very effectively.
Thank you. It's really hard. You know, the ones with text and lettering, it takes a long time to pick an image I want to paint, and then to do it and like it afterwards is a whole nother thing.
I love everything you do, Alex.
Thank you, Robert.
I covered your work immensely, Alex.
Thanks you, Skip. Thanks for having me with this.
Enjoy the pieces I have of you very much.
Thank you very much. Beautiful presentation and a real wide range, a very wide range of works there. Successful, each element, each work was very different in ways, and you're very successful, and you know, you're a rich thinker, obviously. Very nice.
Thank you.
I want to move to Robert Zinn Stark. Robert, you're the gallerist amongst us. You're the guilty one, right?
That's right. I'm the headhunter, or the person that goes to like King Kong's island and like finds the beast and then like tries to bring them to civilization and present them, and everyone gets killed in the process, including myself. I think that's right.
Well, how did you become a gallerist? And tell us a little bit about your past history, Robert.
Oh, well, that is there's so many narratives. There's so many versions of a narrative, right? You could say, you know, on one hand, one of my grandmothers was an artist, and she, you know, got me going to art classes in an early age. But, you know, I also didn't like a lot of things in school, and I was validated early on by the arts, and so I always had a love for them. But I think really the real answer is something to do with curiosity, in that I actually don't even like the term gallerist is like, you know, weird for me to identify with, just because I'm always curious in exploring new things and concepts and ideas and practices. So I've always wanted to be all these different things, whether it was an artist or an architect or a, you know, a writer, or even things that are, you know, more mundane, you know, different types of entrepreneurial ventures. So doing exhibitions, you know, I started working in sales when I was younger, and I was pretty good with sales. And then I thought, oh, well, what if I could sell art? Like, that would be kind of a great thing, because I loved art. And every time you do an exhibition, you get to explore something totally different. You know, you get to go into the mind of an artist in a totally different paradigm. You know, being able to have that kind of endless exploration, not just on a conceptual level, but on a, you know, completely experiential, existential level, you know, was what, you know, really interested me. And I have a big interest in philosophy, and, you know, I see the arts as kind of the praxis of the theory that the armchair philosopher might, you know, otherwise get stuck into. There's kind of a relationship there, but anyway, that is to say, many paths until I just, you know, decided I was going to do my own thing and just do it, presenting artists, and a lot of my friends were artists. So I started wanting to show the art of my friends. So yeah, I don't know, the answer, I can never answer that question properly. I feel like it's a shit show every time. So apologies for anyone.
Robert, you answered it perfectly. It's not one thing. You gave us a wide variety of things, and that's really, you know, like cooking. A lot of ingredients go into a dish. You gave us a lot of elements. I did want to ask you your philosophy background. Are you a Foucault fan? What philosophy draws you? Because I sort of sense that right away.
Oh, well, I do love Foucault, but I love a lot of, you know, both classical philosophers and, you know, continental philosophers. I actually have a writing project that I started myself, which is kind of a journal of aphorisms and kind of just contemplative thoughts called Black Holes or Hidden Stars. And I started it after I closed my old space, Mars, a museum and retail space. And it's been a really nice kind of regular practice for me. And their poetry sneaks its way in there too. There's one kind of poet philosopher that I really liked his format, Leopardi, and he wrote or had this giant text that he created throughout his life called the Zibaldoni, and it's basically it was just like a compilation of like his like notes and thoughts, and it was like entries that just kind of would go, and you know, there was never necessarily a rhyme or reason to the type of output he was doing, except that he was compiling it all. And I kind of like that. So I'll be going around and I'll have a note and I'll think on things. And I think on things, you know, I think one of the things I really love about working with art and doing studio visits and looking at art is it's a contemplative, it can bring you into a contemplative space if you're actually having an intimate relationship with the art. And that contemplative space sort of dissolves ideas and words and identities. And, you know, I think in philosophy, when you're reading theory and you're reading, you know, different articulations on abstract or, you know, paradoxical ideas, they're usually trying to push the horizon, or, you know, raise the firmament, or however you want to say it. But the philosopher is usually, you know, taking paradigms that we think to be true and twisting or expanding on them. But I think you can only get to those kind of articulations when you kind of blow it all up, and you know, getting into that contemplative space that art allows is, or just contemplating beauty, as, you know, maybe Pythagoras would say, something like that, helps you get there. So I don't have favorites. I like a lot of things. I never have a favorite for anything. I have lots of favorites. I started to do, actually, a lot of my, you know, my programming has always been kind of based around thinking about these broad philosophical kind of brackets, and art history loves them, you know. Something as something, something is something, you know. The art is sublime, you know, the object as, you know, noumenon, whatever. I started an online platform called Pluto Projects this past year, but I've been working on it for years. And thinking kind of about, I'm always looking at things and thinking about, like, well, what sort of movements are we seeing in art? What have we been seeing for 100 years? And let's try to group it together. And, you know, we talk a lot about conceptualism. And I think conceptualism has largely been a reaction to financialization of society, and artists, you know, trying to regenerate or resist that. But I think in our lifetimes, we're also seeing, I think we're kind of at the, I would say we're in like the rococo of conceptualism. We're like in this like very kind of decadent, elaborate version of conceptualism on one hand. But then we're also seeing in our lifetimes a really big shift in world society, which is virtualization. You know, the invention of the internet is changing everything from how we socially organize ourselves and discourse and present artwork, for example. That's why I asked that question about the foam piece outside in the photograph, and the intention or kind of the thought to that. But you know, and what is virtualization doing to us and the body and intimacy? And I see a lot of artists reacting to that. You know, contemporary artists are making work that I think I would call, I think reification is a really interesting concept or word that I kind of go back to a lot over the years. Since I started.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Reification, yeah, to reify, I mean, it's interesting. It's in contrast to virtualize, like what is to virtualize, right? You know, I think we know, but then you think about it and you're like, I don't know if we know. But, you know, in reifying, you're making something real. And it does seem like a very stark contrast to conceptualizing things, you know, and making things into concepts, which of course, you know, I draw a parallel between, you know, the increasing creation of financial instruments and credit and everything else, as, you know, in conceptual terms. But then, you know, when we're dealing with looking at screens all day, and we're dealing with looking at kind of representations, you know, photographic representations of ourselves and others, Facebook, you know, how do we make our experience real again when the screen is, you know, dominating most of our lifetime? You know, we stare at the screen, and even doing a Zoom, you know, a Zoom chat like this. And then, you know, I think, you know, artists are constantly trying to regenerate themselves and by sharing that, they help regenerate, you know, other parts of their community or society. But it's interesting. I think, you know, you can see artists reacting to both how we're changing our ways of being in community and sharing intimacy and being vulnerable, in the sense that, you know, we'll see, I've been seeing, you know, artists playing with things like food, sharing of food, the body, things that represent the body, ceramics, you know, and it's all very, you know, playful, and to reference that dichotomy between New York, you know, I forgot who was speaking, but she was talking about, you know, this perception that on the West Coast, we're seeing so much, you know, bright colors and kind of a playfulness, as opposed to the New York, you know, the dreary, dark New York seriousness. And, you know, I would say to maybe propose a theory that it's not so much maybe the weather as maybe that, you know, in New York, financialization is still incredibly dominant. It's the, you know, the finance capital of the world. And those are the power structures and the patrons that exist there. But, you know, what we're seeing on the West Coast, I mean, LA is a fireworks of different industry, right? There's media obviously is a big industry here, but there's many industries competing, and tech is also one of them. But, you know, what I would say broadly in a broad stroke theory is like the West Coast, there's a lot of play or room for the exploration of this new territory of virtualization of, you know, society, both participating in it and also retreating from it. And I see, you know, a lot of those neon colors or those bright colors maybe actually kind of referencing the fact that we're staring at RGB screens quite a lot, you know, on our phones and everything else. So you get those, you know, fluorescent, you know, bright colors all the time that only a screen, you know, it's emitted light versus, you know, any other type of reflective light.
Robert,
So,
it's very important for us as artists to hear a gallerist's perspective. I mean, we artists mostly speak with other artists. You speak like a mix of an artist and a gallerist as well. Yes, the term gallerist. In New York, it's the term art dealer. They look at you a little funny when you say gallerist, because they really are dealers. And it's interesting how the words have changed in time. And of course, words are just labels, and they don't really suffice to cover what you are or what you do. But I want to thank you for sharing. You know, you bring a different perspective that artists need to know, because artists want gallerists. That you are a very important part of this loop. We all want shows. We all want the press that goes with it, and obviously the sales, so we can pay for studio space. So I just want to thank you for everybody for doing what you do. You're an invaluable part of the loop of art that's really necessary. And you also, you're obviously deep in a lot of thoughts that artists engage as well. No question about it. And I'm sure it influences what you curate, the artists you meet. And I'm sure the artists you meet feed you. And I was a gallerist, and it's a great thing to listen to artists, and it just constantly expands your mind and your visual capacity. And it's amazing. I don't think artists realize it, but a gallerist with an open eye gets a lot from his artist. That in general, gallerists don't pick their artists. They often ask the artist they have to make a recommendation, because they know the artist has the better eye in a way. So
100%. And there's also, it's an inner eye, you know, when you're asking an artist to recommend someone, there's you know, a community there, and there's a connectiveness that's based on something deeper. You know, there's intimacy that you're kind of following the trail of. So that inspiration is kind of what you follow. But thank you very much. I appreciate being invited to be on this. It was a great experience watching and kind of getting to see all the studios. It was a really fun thing. I've never been on this. And I will make one more prediction that I'll say that, you know, everyone that's doing figurative work, I think that is going to become more and more relevant as we're, you know, contemplating or dealing with virtualization of the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice. And I like that prediction at the end too. I think you're right. Maybe being in lockdown locks us into ourselves a little more, as one artist said. And so then we become more human at the same time. I want to move to our last presenter, to Rashid Mohammedi. Oh, wait, we've got you on mute. You need to unmute.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yes. So it's Rashid Mohammedi. I want to tell you guys right away that I don't know how much of a charge I have on this phone. For some reason, it's not holding a chart. I don't know what's going on exactly. So I'll make a pretty quick presentation. Although here, let me get a little bit more light in here so you can see a little better. This is a very a little bit unprepared, I have to say. I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work here, and I have a lot to show if you care to see what I'm doing. Yeah, so I'm a painter. I just show you here some of my work in the studio space. I work out of my apartment, but I have a split level apartment. So I live downstairs and I work upstairs. I've just turned this living room into my studio, and I make dozens of paintings a year, more than that. I don't know how many, drawings, paintings, prints. And I also build these little house structures. About once a year, I build just for the hell of it, just to do something completely different. I build these little, this is probably the smallest and the most stripped down and sparse structure I've built. But it's kind of covered with things. But yeah, so I try to just give you a quick view of, you're going to stop me if there's anything that you want to focus on, but I'm just going to just show you a little bit. My studio is a total mess right now. I'm really sorry. Yeah, you probably guessed from my name that I'm French Moroccan, and a lot of my recent paintings have something to do with, kind of my identity, as somebody from here and there. I also have I have a gallery in Morocco that shows my work, and lately I've just been I've always been interested in certain themes and subject matter, because it's a very, very rich culture in Morocco, and I kind of jumped into different things, using pattern, using a certain idea of figuration, certain idea of design that is that borrows in some way from my Moroccan culture, and so far so good. I mean, as far as its reception, I've had a pretty good reception. People like the stuff I'm doing in Morocco, certainly. So I'll just show you.
Yes, show us some more works. The work looks interesting.
Oh, thank you. I'll just move things around a bit. I'm really sorry about the disorderliness of it, but I'll just move a few canvases around. Like this is actually a painting that's very loosely based on a Delacroix. If you can see it, I don't know if you can see it from here. I'll try to move it position. An old Delacroix painting of a scene from Morocco. It's called the La Belle Baroud. It's a medieval, like a pageantry horse race type thing. And I just like I was always fascinated by this thing when I was a child. This I knew about it. I'd never seen it in Morocco. But when I had this show, I decided I would just pick almost like cliches of Moroccan culture: the water merchants, the horse racing, all the different things that Jamal Elfnaz, the square where the snake charmers, all that stuff. And I was just playing with it a little bit, and trying to basically, I'm just trying to be comfortable and free, with what I'm doing. Lately, I've been.
Rashid, are you familiar with Matisse's Moroccan series?
Oh yeah, the paintings he made in 1912, the drawings. Oh, you mean the painting, the Moroccans, for instance? Yeah, I love that painting. I'm a big fan of Matisse. I look and think about Matisse a lot. There's just such a great sense of the placement of things, form, everything that's important in representational art, as far as I'm concerned. Matisse nailed it almost completely all the time and in different ways.
Painting?
What was that?
Could we see that painting with the pink and floral in front?
Oh, is this one here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the most obvious piece to show you. This isn't actually completed. It's I am doing I have a commission. I have a collector in Minnesota, and they've asked me to do a family portrait. And they've actually sent me, it's kind of weird, it's a little uncomfortable, but I'm up for the challenge. But they asked me to do a painting. They created a Photoshop composite of other paintings of mine, and they asked me to with them included in the picture. It looked like a Romeo Bearden or something like that. And I said, okay, well, I can work with this, So this would be the background for that. And it's a family, a wife and husband with their child and dog. And
You lower the screen.
What was that? Can you see it?
A little lower.
I'm sorry, I can't see what this thing sees.
It's good. It's good. All good.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sorry. All good.
So yeah, this is an underpainting, and like I said, like these patterns. There's a few things that I've been like recurring elements in almost all the work, the paintings I've been doing, and that's the line work, pattern, and more recently this kind of. I'm just really interested in changing the speed of the look of the painting, and I started streaking the paint, not unlike, I guess, Gerhard Richter or something, just smearing the paint and then working with that as a ground. And so you can see a little bit of how you might be able to see in this painting here how I did that. I just, trying different things, basically, and whatever I find that's kind of fun too. That's important to me. This is a painting I did. I started last year. Usually it takes me about 2 weeks to make a painting like this, but I reworked this one over and over. It's during the lockdown. I got restless and I said, this could use some blue, so I went ahead and did that. But this is representative, I think, of a lot of the work I was doing, like certainly last year with the line, this kind of Picabia-esque line work. Can you see that all right?
Yes, that's better. That's it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll just bring it real low. Yeah. And so I just like that to play with the space, and to disorient the eye a little bit by superimposing forms and line a certain way. So I was doing that quite a lot. And maybe you can see the whole thing a little better from here. there's just piles and piles of paintings right now. Yeah, so this is a painting. It's all about an experience of quarantine. So I call it Artemis in Quarantine. This large painting that has all kinds of other stuff on it, but this is kind of representative of stuff I've been doing just since the quarantine, since March or April. Just for the hell of it, it's something completely different for me. There's an element of chance that I really like in the technique of smearing the paint, streaking the paint a certain way, and then working over it with these figures. So, as unfortunately, I have some different kinds of things under here, which I'll try to pull something out real quick if I can do it safely.
So you have a motif basically of the star.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring motif. I reuse like
Mosaic text
over and over. What was that?
Or they're the mosaic of
Alhambra
tiles, right?
Yeah,
Tiles,
yeah.
Morocco.
Yeah, there are they're actually these Berber rug patterns. This is kind of a, like this year, my paintings, I felt like, I bought a bunch of palette knives and I started going wild with them, and opening up the pictorial space a certain way, like putting in white and things like that, trying to create a miasma that I can then order in a certain way somehow, Here's a few other works. My place is really messy. I don't know if you can see, unfortunately. So this is a painting I did last year before I started really smearing paint around, and it's got the solid blue field. I'm also collect a lot of art. That's a Jules de Ballancourt drawing there. This is something that's almost purely decorative. I was asked to be in a show in LA at Charlie James Gallery, and the curator was like, "Yeah, I really dig this like decorative thing," and it's not something that I usually was doing. I kind of more geared to make I guess you might call it more conventional representational paintings.
Rashid,
Yeah.
decorative is the new conceptual.
Is it? I have a hard time following everything. I just do whatever the hell I want. But that's interesting. I guess so. I mean, there was a big show at MoCA recently that I had a chance to see, a survey show of decorative painting from the 70s, and I can see that they're rehashing, or not rehashing, but they're reevaluating certain ideas, that
Rashid, I'm going to open it up to some questions.
Okay, sure.
And then we'll wrap it up. I'm sorry.
No problem.
You went last, but I think we really got a sense of your work and your energy. And I like very much when you do the figurative line work over that strong coloration background. That gets a layering. The figure is then sort of enclosed. You have a dynamism in there as well, that what you call the decorative piece, that had a lot of interest as well, too. Working, there's no question about it. You couldn't be farther from Patrick Donovan, and yet that's the beauty of this presentation, that we've got this wide range of artists, and we're all in the same game. The recurrent words were fun, chance, play, but there is a thought process, and everybody's painting here. You can't break out of your style, even though Alex has several styles. He is always going to work within the framework of those styles. In some way, when we paint or create, it's us coming through the canvas. There's no question about it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. If it didn't show, it has to show. You're being. So should I open it up for questions, or is everybody ready to retire?
Let's open it up for questions or comments. Anybody?
Okay.
So where'd you study art?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Oh, it's a good school. Where are you? It's a good school.
Were you originally? Oh, I think his phone cut out.
Yeah. Like that.
I think he ghosted us.
I don't think we lost him. He warned us we were going to lose him.
His battery.
Yeah, he said his battery was dying.
Let's do the
He
conceptual
also went
clap.
to.
Let's clap for him, and
He also went to.
This is for you, Rashid. Conceptual clap. I want to thank Skip Snow for putting this together. Brilliant group, and all the artists, without me mentioning all of you who presented tonight, and of course, everybody who came to listen. This was fascinating. Another dimension to what the ATOA does, and we don't do anything. You guys obviously do it all. We just provide a format, and I want to thank you all. Where every Monday, next Monday will be one of those random things where people present, but the Monday after we have a gallery from Brooklyn, Naked Gallery or something. They're going to have a very strong presentation as well. So thank you all for coming, sharing your time, spread the word. Check out our website. It's atoanyc.org. And again, Skip, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much.
Thank
you
you.
very
Thanks,
much. It was
Skip.
great.
Thanks, Barry.
Really enjoyed it.
Having me.
Wonderful.
Skip.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.